This morning, I want to address the cancel culture, which is a sort of movement that seemingly is, I don't know, just popped up in the last year or years, where some very loud voices are calling for the end of activities or groups or organizations, companies that they deem objectionable or offensive. So to address that, my guest this morning is Dr. Steven Mintz, and he's the author of the book Beyond Happiness and Meaning, Transforming Your Life Through Ethical Behavior. What a concept. Dr. Mintz, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for taking time to talk to us about this seemingly new phenomenon. So help me define this real quickly. Cancel culture, how do you define that?
Well, it is, as you stated, it's an attempt by one group to stifle the speech of another group or their actions that they find objectionable. So you're trying to basically shun someone or some group from society by taking steps to stifle their free speech or canceling them.
Or canceling them, okay.
Right.
In a way, we've always done that. I mean, there's things that we object to that we wish weren't there or weren't around, but why has this grown into this? Well, let me ask the other question. Where did the term cancel culture come from? Who started that?
Yeah, it did occur earlier under the name of political correctness. So if you had a point of view that was not the prevailing political view of a group or society, you could be called out. But calling out, which is the predecessor of the cancel culture, was not as extreme. Called out was criticized. But you could criticize somebody and debate the issues, which is what's missing now, rather than stifle free speech. But over time, as we've become more of a divisive society, we've broken up into an us versus them type society. It's gone one step further and really trying to create harm to an individual or group with an objectionable point of view.
Sure, and the squeaky wheel gets the oil, so to speak, or the loudest voice is the one that is heard most, and that for
Right.
whatever reason, they seem to be making the most noise, like cancel police funding is one subject that comes up constantly all the time. So how do we deal with this? Are there any good sides of all of this?
Well, I suppose the best side is you are trying to hold somebody accountable for their speech or actions. I always point to the examples of Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby and the Me Too movement as perhaps a good example of where the cancel culture worked. To stifle those individuals, I think most would say, is a good thing. But it's not always the case that it is a good thing, and sometimes we look back and realize that the objectionable speech or actions were really more accepted by society. So I think you asked, when did it start? In my mind, the first instance of the cancel culture was this quarterback for the 49ers, Colin Kaepernick, which most people know about now. And he was the first one to kneel during the playing of the national anthem. And that was not met with a whole lot of support, not only from the NFL, but society in general, and steps were taken to cancel him. He lost his position as a quarterback with the 49ers, and nobody would hire him, even though he had taken the 49ers to the Super Bowl. To this day, he hasn't been able to get a job. So there's a situation where we were a little bit too harsh. And what's needed, I think, is to engage the other side in debate. We have to learn how to talk to each other. I think we've lost that ability in society.
We really have, politically especially, where it's more divisive than well, maybe, I don't know if it ever is the right word because it's been a divisive country, but more divisive than ever. Either do it my way or the highway kind of thing.
That's correct. That's exactly the way it is, and we have political division in the country, and I think that's part of the reason nothing gets done in Congress. It's us versus them, and when you have a bill for passage, virtually no one from the other side signs on to the bill. It wasn't always that way in this country. We had more of an agreement and, some sort of agreement as to what should be in action. So whether it's the infrastructure bill or funding, defunding police, whatever it is, it's going to be Democrats against Republicans, pretty much split right down party lines. And that's not the way this country was built, not initially anyway.
Right. You're an ethics professor. Ethics plays a huge role. Where has ethics gone?
It's left a long time ago, I think. We've lost our moral compass in society. We've lost the ability to tell right from wrong, which traditionally was done, at least in a very broad sense, with the golden rule, to treat others the way you want to be treated. I mean, after all, who wants to be canceled? Who wants to be called out? Nobody. But yet it happens. So things like kindness and empathy for others, basic core ethical values, also seems to be no longer something we practice in society.
There is accountability, so how do you draw that line between accountability and the cancel culture?
Right, and that's how the cancel culture justifies its actions, holding people accountable, which is important. If you do something wrong, say something wrong, you should be held accountable. But it goes too far when you try to actually take away their livelihood, and you have the community they're involved in just blackball them. And that's how far the cancel culture has gone. So there is a line that you don't cross, and it also becomes an ethical slippery slope. We start making everybody cancel. And in fact, if you don't support the cancel culture point of view of your group, you could be canceled for not doing that.
Are we becoming afraid of speaking up because someone might cancel us?
I think so, and with the advent of social media, everything is anonymous, so it's a lot harder to cancel somebody or criticize them in person and talk to them. It's a lot easier when you're on the internet and you're just posting something on social media, so I think that's the difference today than before.
Is there a way to manage that? Are you seeing any positivity to manage the outreach of social media right now?
I don't, because you need leaders. You need ethical leaders that will put the interests of the country ahead of their own interests or the interests of their party. And we used to call them in politics statesmen, stateswomen. And there's nobody really on the rise. Every once in a while you hear about somebody who tries to do the right thing and cross even party lines, but it's few and far between. And if you don't have the ethical leaders, then you're not going to have role models to follow in their points of view. So that's what's also in society, what we don't have, ethical leaders who put the good of the country and the public ahead of any other good.
And as a professor of ethics, then, how do you see changing that? Is there a change? Do we have the ability to change that?
I think we do, and I think universities could play a big role if professors step forward. And, of course, today there is allegedly a bias in universities for liberal groups. Whether that's so or not, I don't know. But professors should be leaders in their classroom and teach their students to debate, dialogue on differences of opinion, learn to disagree with each other without being disagreeable. And that's where it's got to start, because college students are really affected, very much so, by their professors, their words and their actions.
Amen, absolutely. And they're our next leaders. But without learning to listen and accept another opinion, we're still stymied, aren't we?
That's right. We are still stymied, and I don't see any real change on the horizon. In fact, I'd like to see it start even before college, in grade school. There's no reason not to be debating these issues. For example, there was this push to change the name of buildings for George Washington, for Thomas Jefferson, because they had slaves. I contend it's a lot better to discuss these issues with students, make it a teachable moment, and, really have them learn something from it. A good example is the University of Missouri had a statue, or has a statue, of Jefferson on campus, being somebody from Missouri. He's well thought of, and the students wanted the statue taken down. But to the university's credit, what they did instead is put up a plaque which explained a little bit about Jefferson, who he was, what his positions were. And I think that's just a great way of doing it, keeping it as a learning experience rather than an us versus them.
That's really good. Why can't we take that lesson and translate that to other places, other people, other institutions?
Yeah, well, we should be able to, but there's not enough voices standing up to do that. And I think it's what you said before. They're afraid of being canceled. There's a group of people that do talk loudly. They may be in the minority, and they seem to be ruling the day, their opinion, their views, and the other side doesn't want to go against them.
Is there any hope out there at all? You kind of alluded that you didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, I'm an optimist, so I hope so. I hope we'll get to a point in society where we realize we have gone too far, and we do try to reverse course, or at least hold it in bay. But I don't see anyone out there to lead the charge. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be nice to have some sort of program on cable news or wherever where they discuss these issues, and nobody gets on cable news and starts talking about the evils of the cancel culture as much as what they're canceling, the ideas, the thoughts, and we just need more dialogue. We're not going to get anywhere without it.
Do we just need to get to the breaking point before there's suddenly an epiphany that, oh, I get it now?
Yeah, I hope not, because, I could probably point to a lot of breaking points, but certainly January 6th and the insurrection was a breaking point, where you talk about a group of people that took an action that's, objectionable or should be objectionable to everybody else, and that's just a bridge too far, and that's where we've gone.
Dr. Steven Mintz, ethics professor and the author of the book Beyond Happiness and Meaning, Transforming Your Life Through Ethical Behavior. Really must read for a lot of folks. Dr. Mintz, thank you so much. Very enlightening.
Oh, thank you for having me.